All right, Chris, thank you so much for agreeing to do this, and very excited to have a conversation with you about the world of sales and sales reps and what makes an elite seller.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Chris, a little bit about your track record. I think you joined Gong, 200K of ARR, and scaled that up to $200 million of ARR, and you saw the whole journey. And now you're a founder of a very, very hot sales enablement platform.
Yeah.
And we're very proud customers. And I've personally learned a lot from you, Chris, over the years. And you continue to be a source of inspiration for I would say, the broader B2B sales community because of the incredible work you've done. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
Good. So today's session, Chris, will be more about understanding what makes an elite seller. And when you talk about sales, I want to pick your brains, and there's some things that we have seen also in terms of what works. So would love to really have a discussion with you on some aspects of when you were selecting Gong, what was that all about? At the same time, we're a pretty hot startup. So if a company is looking to recruit elite sellers, or vice versa, and a seller is trying to go and get a seat in the next rocket ship, which can be life transformatory, what does it take to get there? Your quick thoughts around that, because let me start by asking you that what made you select Gong?
Yeah, well, my selection of Gong was pretty unique, and I don't know if the process I went through can be applied easily toward other people, but I can give some retrospect for people. So bear with me as I tell the story. So I think it was around 2015, this was before Gong was a company, or at least was on the scene. Me and my co-founder, who's actually my co-founder for PClub.
Okay.
I had a co-founder back then we started a company called Conversature. This company was intended to do what Gong did, right? Like I said, this was before I knew about Gong. And we were basically kids at the time. We didn't really know what we were doing. We didn't raise any venture capital. And we spent about 18 months on this venture before we kind of had to close up shop. We ran out of money, which is another way of saying I ran out of my life savings. And me and my wife and my 1-year-old son at the time were like getting really close to having to live on the street. So this was
more
like
from your adversity.
This was like kind of like the first genesis of me joining Gong. As a funny side note, Gong came out of stealth mode in June 2016. They announced their avocado seed round of funding. It was $6 million. And I was still working on this venture, Conversature at the time, and we were struggling. We had like 3 or 4 customers. It wasn't working. Like all of our customers were not using the product well. It was just like breaking. And I remember the CEO of one of our customers sends me the press release of Gong announcing their funding round. And it was like a little bit of a subtle slap in the face because he goes, "It sounds like your space is heating up." Now, this coming from a guy who just bought our product and it wasn't really working, right? That was his way of, saying, get your shit together, more or less. And I remember that day, it was June 2016 really well, because I remember after reading that, it's like 3 p.m. I closed the blinds to my bedroom and I just went to sleep because I was so like despondent, and I didn't wake up till like 4 or 5 a.m. the next day. A few months later after that, we closed up shop, and I was already kind of scheming to wanting to join Gong. There was 3 companies in the space. There was Gong, there was Chorus, there was a company called Objection, and they were all basically in the same spot, like really early stage. And I'm like, how do I get on Amit Bendov's radar, who's the CEO of Gong, still is the CEO of Gong. And funny enough, like the next day I check my LinkedIn messages and he sends me a message. He's like, "Hey, we got like a couple demo requests from like former customers of yours. They told us you're closing up shop. I hope it's not true, but if it is, do you want to talk about working together?" And I was like, yes, like he's coming to me. Now I get to like play it cool and coy. And so I had a conversation with him. I had a conversation with the other 2 as well, Exec Vision and Chorus. And I ultimately chose Gong for a number of reasons, but these were really early stage companies at the time. If you looked at Gong's logo back then, in fact, you can probably find it on Google if you search like Gong blue logo. It looked like clip art. Like Gong did not look like the company it is today. And I think I was like the second employee based in the US. The only guy who was out in the United States before me was Aran Aloni, who is still there. He's their EVP of ecosystems. But when I look at that story in hindsight, like I kind of just joined the company after like 18 months of struggle, chose Gong for a variety of reasons. And I look back on that and I'm like, well, if I was giving somebody else advice on like, how do you identify a company that's going to make it big, a few things come to mind. The obvious one is the leadership team, right? Are you going to be surrounded by high quality leaders? And I know that to be true about SAFE, right? I've met you, I've met Nick, some of your other leaders, and it seems like you guys have like a really high caliber bench of people, not just like the operators, but also the advisors for your company. So that's a really strong signal. The second thing though is market hunger. Do you know who Gary Halbert is? Probably not.
No.
But okay, so Gary Halbert, very unknown in the tech world. He's known as one of the best direct response copywriters of all time. So his heyday was like in the 70s, 80s, and like early 90s. He would write direct mail, and he made millions upon millions of dollars for himself and his clients. And toward the end of his life, he would teach copywriting and marketing seminars to direct response marketers. And he would say, all right, we're going to do an exercise as a group here. We're going to start competing hamburger stands. Okay. And here's the exercise. You get to choose whatever competitive advantage you want. And you're going to be competing against me. But as soon as you choose yours, then I get to choose mine. And I guarantee mine's going to be better, even though you got to choose first. And so what do you want to choose? And people would say things like great tasting burger or systematized operations like McDonald's so you can scale the living hell out of the thing, or even location and stuff like that. And they would choose one of those, and he would say, is that your final answer? And I would say, yeah, final answer. And he goes, good, I'm going to crush you because my competitive advantage is I'm going to put my burger stand in the middle of a group of starving people. And I can have a bad tasting burger, I can have messy operations, I can have all these things and I'm still gonna win. And his point is like the market hunger, much like the market you play in, like cybersecurity, that probably dictates company success more than just about anything. I would say the only thing that dictates success more than that is the leadership team, because the leadership team can make the decision to pivot from one market to another, but the market's the second one. And so if you think of Gong at the time, B2B sales and just sales in general, it's a huge market and they're very hungry, right? Revenue is one of the most like emotional problems in a business. And so I think that's one of the reasons Gong led. There's a variety of other reasons, but those are the two indicators I would be looking at is like, what does the hunger of the market look like? Are you selling a hamburger in the middle of a like group of starving people? And then are you playing alongside high caliber people? Not just the leadership team, but just the talent bar in the company in general.
Yeah, those are two great points. And let's try to break this down, Chris, like you do in a lot of your courses and posts, into individual bite-sized consumable points where we talk about almost like a playbook which is repeatable. If I'm trying to break this whole framework down into something which is consumable and repeatable for people who are listening in, right? Mm-hmm. Let's start with the first thing which you mentioned, which is I always think it starts with the market, right? 100%. As you very, very rightly pointed out, right? So if there are too many hungry people out there, you'll always win, no matter what anybody else says. I think we're living in a world today where there are almost very clear trends about the next 1 or 2 decades that you can see in certain industries, right? So I've seen that market analogy, and there's enough resources. I'll try to give a link. For example, I was reading this report from McKinsey which says what are the next big battlegrounds for the next decade. And everything starting from AI till EVs till cybersecurity that we play in, and there's like a list of over I think around 17, 18 industries. So my high recommendation would always be that you want to go to something which is an industry of the future.
Yeah.
Because even when you do well today, it can compound itself in terms of your understanding of the industry and the knowledge of the pain that the industry is going through. In fact, I love this thing which you talk about, right? You need to know the market in most cases better than the buyer, so that you can pierce through them and actually go ahead and actually talk about the solution.
Well, this is coming from the guy who provides skills. I think it's more important than skills. Now, I think skills are critical, but if you understand your market like the back of your hand, right? You can peer into their soul, you can talk to them as if you're reading a page from their diary, then you just 10x the value of all of your skills, right? So imagine if you were good at discovery already, you were good at presenting things, business cases, cold emails, cold calls, you're good at all of these things, but you know nothing about your market. It's hard to apply those skills if you don't have that level of empathy and insight with your market. Now, as soon as you introduce a deep understanding of the people you sell to, and then you overlay these skills on top of it, now it's like pouring gasoline on a fire a little bit. A mentor of mine, probably 10 years ago, he gave me some of the least actionable yet best advice I've ever been given in sales and marketing, whatever. And he said, if you can articulate their pain better than they can articulate it themselves, they will automatically trust you, automatically assume you have the best solution in the space. Now, it's not actionable because I can't immediately just take this isn't a tactic, and transport it over here and suddenly it works. You got to do the hard work of understanding your market. That's one of the reasons I've spent so much of my career serving sales audiences and sales leaders, because I know them so well, right? I've done this for 10 or 12 years now. And I know how to cut through in a very resonant way with them.
And that's very, very useful because, one of your courses which I was taking, which is about account planning, actually talks about how do you first tier the accounts and then you plan and then create a point of view. The first piece around tiering, you actually, the course actually very beautifully talks about, does that sound like a customer or a pain that we truly solve? And that really comes from, if we understand what industry we are in and what is the pain we are solving for the customers, and then you can micro segment them into ICPs, and it actually then, less but better, not going after a big territory with thousands of accounts.
Well, I mean, this kind of speaks to another one of the keys to $1 million W-2, which is an account is not an account is not an account, right? So, some accounts, you're going to pull the majority of your revenue out of very few accounts, right? It's kind of like that cheesy Pareto principle, 80-20. That 80-20 rule, which is probably true, right? I've never validated whether it's true or not, but it seems like it probably is. And whether it's exactly 80-20 or 94-4 or 70-30, it's kind of beside the point. There are high propensity accounts, and there are high propensity people inside those accounts. And who you're talking to is more important than what you're saying, right? You can say all of the best things. In fact, I'll even go this far. One of the best discovery calls I've ever run in my life ended up in a deal that went dark on me, stalled. I didn't win the deal because I was talking to the wrong person. I was talking to a low level kind of sales operations person. Instead of, the CRO who's in pain or has passion around the value prop. And so I think there's actually a couple ways to think about tiering. It's not just account tiering, it's person tiering. I wouldn't say tiering, but propensity, right? You're looking for high propensity accounts and you're looking for high propensity people in those accounts, because there are low propensity people inside high propensity accounts. High propensity people in high propensity accounts are otherwise known as champions. And so that's what you're looking for. Now, when you put that mix together and then you deploy world-class selling skills with them, great discovery, great demos, presentations, all that kind of stuff, that is where the magic starts to happen.
And Chris, this is actually what brings me to the second part of the first point, which is when you're choosing an industry like, cybersecurity, right? We're in cybersecurity. There are 4,000 products in cybersecurity, right? Only 4,000, right? And
it's not as bad as MarTech. I think MarTech has like 10,000 at this point.
We will probably very soon beat that. The speed at which cybersecurity spend is going up. But to your point, I think the second part about choosing the industry is also what part of the value chain do you play?
Well, I think it's critical. I was going to say it a little bit differently, but I like the way you said it because there's who you're selling to, which is the market, and we've already talked about that. And then there's the scope of what you're selling and the size of the problem you're addressing, right? Like if you sell to a very hungry market and it's a huge market, but you're selling a tiny problem, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you might have a good business in front of you, but if you're an account executive who wants to make $1 million a year, it's just not going to happen. I remember talking to one of my friends. I won't say who it is or what company he went from and then to, but he was selling kind of like a point solution, marketing solution. And he did that for probably 5 years, and he did well for himself. I'm guessing he was making like $300,000 a year or something like that. And then he moved to another company. I don't really understand the company, but I think they sell some sort of like, they sell to like chemists, like big chemical companies. And I think he clocked in around $800,000, his most recent W-2. So not $1 million, but pretty close. And I asked him, what's the difference? And he goes, just size of the problem we're solving.
Wow.
Right, I went from selling like a website problem, which is not unimportant, but not huge, especially the piece of the website he was selling, to, as I understand it, one of the biggest problems for like chemical companies or whatever the hell they sell to. I don't totally understand. But that's all he said. He's like, nothing else changed. The scope of the problem changed. And in your case, you're talking about something very similar. It's the scope of the solution, how many problems it can address, how big those problems are, how expensive those problems are. Right, you can't make big commissions on little problems. Little problems lead to little commissions, big problems, big commissions.
Love that. So, and I think, the whole point of discovery is to get to the point of the problem becoming bigger. And that's why it's called the business problem that we try to solve, right? And that's why you keep peeling the onion and, getting to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we talk about in the course, which you've, applied so wonderfully, which is like, if you're having a discovery conversation with somebody, for some reason, they usually stay way up here in terms of articulating their problem. They're talking about symptoms, usually. I don't know why that is. You could be talking to the most senior person, obviously, or often they still even talk in terms of symptoms. But then when you start asking questions like, what's going on in the business that's driving this to be a priority? Or it sounds like you have a lot of energy behind this, and my guess is you and your ELT members had a meeting about this at some point, and you decided to act on it, and you defined the problem. And what did that meeting sound like? What did you guys talk about? It's the same question as asking, why does that matter? But it sounds a lot better, right? It gets people to want to have a conversation with you. It triggers certain mental pictures of them thinking about this meeting. They get really concrete, and you peel away the layers of the onion, and the closer to the middle of that onion you get, the bigger the problem gets.
Absolutely.
And so you reveal very, problems that have a very high willingness to spend in terms of their resolution.
So in your analogy, right, you spoke about, look, the hamburger store which will win every single time, hands down, will be the one which is surrounded by starving people. But you know what? In today's day and age, there's not one hamburger store. because people can figure
Sure.
out.
You
there's a
plop
ton of
another
them.
hamburger store in the middle of the same group of starving people. If it's a better
Exactly.
burger, now they're going to go
So
to the better burger.
now, and that's where the better burger analogy, or
Yeah.
cheaper burger analogy, or faster burger analogy, all of that comes in, which brings me to the second part, which is once you've locked in on the market, in the sub-market, that'll always have multiple products, right? And I'm a product obsessed CEO. So I was the interim CRO at some point. Right now I'm the interim CTO. That's a good part of being in a small company. I get to wear many hats. I think the second big piece, which a lot of salespeople miss out on, is also the fact that how can you be a part of a product which is truly at the cutting edge? And there can be two segments in my view. One can be the incumbents, which has always been there and has been there, the old gods. And then there'll be the emerging ones, which will be the new gods that you would talk about. We take our example, right? I always like starting as a company. I've always told my team that, look, we'll start with a small problem and become the number one player in that. Then go to an adjacent problem and then become the number one player in that, and then keep expanding, right? Because again, as a small company, you want to be very, very, very clear about the battles that you pick. As a company, we took the cyber risk quantification problem. Forrester came out with a wave. They placed us on the top right. We are not a leader only, we are on the top right. So today when our rep walks in, they basically go and talk about the fact that, look, I'm getting a platform which according to Forrester is the number one platform on the planet to go ahead and solve this particular problem of going ahead and quantifying cyber risk. And we nailed that cyber risk quantification and management around that, which is for vulnerability management, et cetera, et cetera. And we just launched last year an adjacent offering, which is third-party risk management. And the offering that we've been now working on that for a few years now, that we launched last year, we're very, very confident that in the next 18 months with the relevant analyst reports, we'll again end up in the leading spot in the market, because we are not 10%, but 10 times better. Now, the reason I say that is because a lot of salespeople, I don't think they focus enough about the fact that if they walk in with a product which is already the number one product, and it's not just in terms of features, because a lot of people think of product as features. Customers don't buy features, they don't buy products, they buy solutions to the problems that they have, and they reward you by giving money in as ARR or whatever, right? So if you think about us, right, and keep giving examples of, because I'm living this, and that's the reason I'm giving you some examples, right? So as a product, like our number one positioning is backed with that today. Like our product is used by Google, Facebook, Netflix, Dropbox, ADP, Chevron, Caterpillar, Novartis, GSK, Telstra, British Telecom. Some of the largest names in the world today use the platform. And the usage of that product very clearly delivers value, and that value is what is articulated while you're then discovering that as pain in parallel adjacent customers in similar industries which are out there. Just your quick thoughts, right? The importance of product, and what have you seen like salespeople miss out on or think through from a product selection perspective?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts here. What you're saying reminds me of something Amit told me a long time ago. Amit Bendoff, CEO of Gong. We had recently become $1 billion company, measured by valuation, not revenue. And we were having pizza in San Francisco, and I was asking his advice on a bunch of different things. And I told him at one point in life I want to become an entrepreneur. And how did, from his perspective, did we become $1 billion company in such a short period of time? It was probably 4 years or something crazy like that. And he goes, there's two keys to it. Number one, build a product so good that a weak sales and go-to-market team could sell it. And then two, build a sales and go-to-market team so good that they could sell a weak product.
Wow.
And if you combine both of these things, then you've got a big enough market, then you've probably got $1 billion company in the making. And so I always get kind of irritated when I go on social media or LinkedIn and functional people are making arguments that their function is most important, because they're just losing the forest for the trees. It's like RevOps is the most important, or product is the most important, or sales is the most important because we actually make money. And it's like, well, A business is a collection of all of these things to create value in a marketplace. Great sales team without a great product might do okay. Great product without a great sales team might do okay. You put both of these two things together, and now you've got something big. Now, the other thing that went through my mind as you were talking is I had another mentor a long time ago tell me about the story of Domino's Pizza in the 1980s and how they became a huge company. And the exercise my mentor encourages other people to go through is you need to be able to answer this question. Why would I, as your prospect, choose to do business with you and spend money with you versus any other solution in your category, including doing nothing? And if you can answer that question crisply, you can turn your market upside down. And if you have a good product, a differentiated product that answers that question crisply, you can turn your market upside down. So he gives this is kind of an outdated, low-tech example, but he talks about Domino's. Domino's started with like 2 college kids who were trying to pay their way through college. This was their plan. They bought a failing pizza joint. Took it over. The owner was like excited to lump it onto them. It was hemorrhaging money. And so these 2 kids, this was their plan. They were going to run this pizza joint at night to pay for school. One of them bails, by the way. So like the other guy had to quit school and build this pizza joint. And the story goes, eventually he asked himself that question, like, why would somebody buy pizza from me versus any other pizza joint, including like not having any pizza at all? And his answer to that question ended up being fresh hot pizza delivered in 30 minutes or less, or it's yours free.
Oh.
Now, he didn't talk about good pizza, better pizza, special ingredients. There's a time and place for that. But it was basically like he was in a college town full of starving college students who were probably smoking illegal substances.
I was going to say drinking, but
or drinking, and they just want like hot pizza now.
Yeah.
And so that value prop clearly answered why Domino's, because if you don't get it to me in 30 minutes or less, it's free. And so if you can answer, PClub, we talk about this all the time. Why would somebody choose PClub over like some traditional, like kind of old school sales training? Well, it's like, number one, you learn from the top 1% of revenue experts on the planet. 2, we have a course for virtually every skill gap you can imagine. And 3, we have different curriculum for different roles. Instead of teaching the same thing to people who sell steak knives door to door as you do selling safe security.
Totally.
And so that's why we've grown so fast, is we've got like this value prop that cuts through the market like a very hot knife sinking into a stick of butter. And
I hear you're not just selling to B2B companies, you got your first banking customer.
We got our first banking customer. We've got customers who sell to schools, sell to governments. Most of them sell to businesses still, but we're having fun.
I think that's where most people forget that, look, the value comes from the product, not features. Values that come from the product which is out there. And I see a lot of salespeople not make that as a part of their decision which is out there, because a very strong product, which means many happy customers, is one of the top mojos that people can have. That's the proof points that we talk about, right?
Well, it's kind of like what if you think of like a horse race, right? What's more important in winning? Is it the horse or is it the jockey? Is it the product or is it the salesperson? The answer is both.
Totally.
You put an amazing jockey or salesperson on an aging horse who has ankle problems, you're still not going to win.
Yep.
But if you put some little kid who hasn't been trained on how to be a jockey on top of a $1 million racehorse, you're not directing that racehorse. You're probably going to lose.
Yep.
So you need both.
Totally. And I think, like, just for our audience, right? And this is again coming from a product-obsessed CEO who loves selling, by the way. But I think the base, the foundation, starts with that product, because, as you rightly said, right? I think the jockey, which is a salesperson who's listening to this, I'm assuming they're an A+ jockey, which is there. How does they make sure that the horse is right? Because that's where the match really goes in and makes that happen in the right way. I have some metrics that I get shocked that people don't ask me, because I still, and again, at least for the foreseeable future, I still take the final round for anybody who's joining us as a salesperson. And I mean, there's some very, very simple questions you can ask to understand what the product is it really strong or not, right? And something as basic as, like, one of my top AEs who was joining us, during the process while he was interviewing with us, I actually had 3 customers reach out to me, my existing customers, saying, hey, I got this LinkedIn in-mail, and they sent me a screenshot from this person who looks like a sales rep, but he says, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I saw your logo on the website of Safe Security. I just want to know how you use this product and what do you think about that.
Smart.
I was like, wow, that's very, very smart.
Yeah.
And by the way, in my mind, I mean, this was like the respect for that AE before he would come to me goes up exponentially.
That's a discerning account executive.
Exactly, who's really doing the homework, right? How do you not lose between meetings? And this is what you keep doing, right? And then when he came on the call, right, he was very, very, very straight about the questions on the product. His first question was, tell me your gross retention. I'm like, okay, at Safe Security, we're very fortunate. Our gross retention is around 92-93%, so pretty healthy in the top 10 percentile of SaaS companies in the world. He didn't stop there. He said, I want to know how easy it is to upsell also. Are you guys upselling? What's your net retention? Our net retention is more around 115 to 120%. So, of course, again, I gave the answer. He said, that sounds like very, very impressive numbers. What he did not ask on the call, which I feel he should have asked, although he was already in the top 0.1 percentile, sales reps already asking me the right questions.
Give him a break.
Yes, fair point. But how do you get smart about that also? Just peeling the onions, right? Gross retention and net retention is actually a byproduct of what most people miss out for B2B software, which is the daily active usages to monthly active usage ratio. It's called the DAU-MAU ratio. If your product, which is something which your customers are logging in once a month, once a quarter, right? It's not a valuable enough product, right? When I'm doing your courses, and my enablement leader, because I come from the school of thought where I never ask my reps, my VPs to take a course which I have not taken personally, because I'm asking them questions, right? And my questions are better informed only if I understand what training they're going through. So basically, if I'm logging into PClub every day, and my reps are logging in every day, worst case scenario, a few times a week, right? This is a very, very valuable product which is out there. Tomorrow when the renewal comes, or you're seeing, hey, the CEO is logging in every week, there's probably a chance that you can actually do an upsell, because the value is being delivered. It's not just that enablement is seen as only the reps do it. This is a company with a culture which is across the CRO, the CEO, obviously everybody else, because if we are doing it, everybody else is doing it, right? So the DAU-MAU ratio is actually a very, very incredible number. Again, at Safe, we are very, very fortunate. We are at around 30% DAU-MAU, while the industry average, according to Gainsight, is around 12%. So we're in the top, again, 10 percentile for that. But again, that would be a great question. I know that, I've still not come across a single rep which asks me that. But that's the cause, the DAU-MAU ratio. The effect is gross retention and net retention. Gross retention, net retention is the cause. The effect is the NPS score, right? I think NPS scores are bullshit, because, whether the customer is renewed or not is the ultimate NPS, right? You've got a great NPS score, but you got 70% gross retention. Like, what are we talking about, right? And I would, like, as a company, as a rep, I still get shocked that, I'm doing very well, but my company's gross retention is 70%, 60%, and reps still stick around out there. Their net retention is 90-95%. They would still stick around there, which in my view is again a disaster, because again, what they don't realize is that the cost of opportunity, which is like if you were at the same time doing all the great work, But in a company with a 90+% of gross retention, 115, 120% of net retention, not only will you make more money today, but you're compounding what tomorrow can become very, very big. So those are some very basic questions around product that most people don't ask. Any of your quick thoughts, right? Am I stretching it too far in terms of what?
I think what you're getting to here is some of the highest earning, top income, most successful salespeople are actually more business people who happen to know how to sell.
Absolutely.
Rather than salespeople who are floundering their way through knowing business acumen.
Absolutely.
And so that, that's one of the indicators to me of somebody who's going to like make a lot of money in sales is how deep is their business acumen? Do they have the insight and forethought to ask questions like that? Do they even know what that means, right? If you say, what is net dollar retention? What is net revenue retention? Can you explain that to me? And they have no idea. They've probably got some acumen upskilling that they need to work on because their acumen's probably not where it needs to be to like truly be ready to be $1 million earner.
I've still been shocked that most people don't ask the question that, a lot of companies are designed to be acquired. And a lot of companies by design from day zero, at least aspirationally, the vision is to disrupt a market. Like at SAFE, we very naively think with the problem statement that we are going after, we can become the world's largest cybersecurity company, right? I'm not doing this for an acquisition, right? Now, they say never say never, but at least the design, at least the first principles thinking of what needs to go in. And that's a very different way of building the business. Yeah. We have a 130 slide culture deck that we created together with the whole company. Now, if my goal was to sell the company in 2 years or 3 years, there's no reason to have such a consciously built, ever-evolving culture because, you want to make a quick buck and get out of it. That was not the point from day zero. I'm not saying anything that's bad because, again, a lot of entrepreneurs do that and people do make substantial wealth there. But again, by design, SAFE was never built to be like, okay, I just want to be acquired tomorrow, right? Our vision is to ensure that there is a safer digital future with where and how things are. Your quick thoughts around do salespeople think in that perspective in terms of the company vision, and does that matter to them?
Well, I don't know if they do, but I would say they should because you're only going to go so far if you just join companies that go through base hit or double exits. Right? I don't really follow baseball, but I think it's a good analogy, right? You hit a base hit, a double, a triple, or a home run. You're going to make the majority of your money if you work for companies that have potential of being a home run. Not just because you're going to be on a growth trajectory where you make a ton of commission, right? The company becomes very big, you go through that growth phase, make a lot of money. But if you have, any meaningful equity whatsoever and you're starting at a company that's, sub 30 million or earlier, and you let that equity vest over time, it can be worth a lot of money, especially if that company becomes, very big, right? There's stories upon stories about, these companies that became huge, creating dozens, if not in some case, hundreds of millionaires. So that's what I went through.
So I've been very, very fortunate to have multiple mentors in my life. I've learned a lot from you, Chris. Another example is John Chambers. You talk about creating millionaires, right? He joined Cisco when Cisco's revenue was $40 million. He left Cisco, and when he left Cisco, Cisco's revenue was $40 billion. In that process, he created 10,000 millionaires, right? And that's a crazy number. I keep joking with him all the time that, John, if there's just one number I want to beat you at, is this number. Everything else can be a byproduct. I'm not too worried. But that's the vision, right? That you want to be in a company which has that vision, which can go all the way, can be a home run. Because again, I think no matter where you go, you have to really clock in those hours to make things happen.
Well,
how big can this be?
Yeah, I also think AEs should be asking CEOs that question in the interview because a company can have the potential of becoming huge, but if the CEO can't see it, it's not going to happen because you're not going to get something that you're not actively striving for. Building a business is hard. If the CEO doesn't have it in his or her mind that this could be a $1 billion a year company or a $10 billion a year company or whatever. If there's no vision there, if you ask the question, they're like, well, we're just trying to create a great place to work and, you know, maybe sell to private equity in a couple of years. If you're a truly ambitious account executive and you want to make 800 grand, $1 million, whatever, it's probably not going to happen in that kind of company. Even if the company is in the right market, it's not going to just happen out of nowhere. CEOs and leadership teams are what create these mega outcomes. So, I don't mean for this to be religious. I'm personally not religious, but I think it's a good analogy. Peter Drucker, who's known as like the father of modern management.
Yep.
In one of his books, he says, big businesses are not created by acts of God, they're created by business people. Markets are not created by acts of God, they're created by business people. I think a lot of people, whether they say those words or not, actually kind of assume that these big businesses are created by acts of God, right? It was just lucky, like we just like caught a wave. No, somebody surfed their board toward that wave, rode the wave, did certain things to make that happen.
100% aligned to that. And I think one of the good metrics there for sales reps to be able to see would also be the track record of the CEO.
Yeah.
If the CEO is on the 5th startup and he's sold maybe 3 out of the 4 startups, which is before that, that actually shows a different kind of a track record. Again, nothing wrong. A lot of times, you know, you can make money in a short duration, but going ahead and again seeing the compounding effect, because I've always seen that, you know, the multi-year advantage that generally reps get if they're in a great startup is really the compounding of the equity. You can still sometimes, when there's a lot of push, create some good money in like the short term, but that can be for a year or 2 years. You don't make crazy amount of wealth by $1 million in 1 year. Yeah. You actually do that by a couple of years, compounded, added with equity on top of that. So obviously the leadership and their vision of, you know, what they think, like if 5 million things fall in place, how big can this be? Yeah. Would be a great question that a lot of reps ask me, and I feel great about that. And then it comes to the culture, because, you know, it's a very conscious decision of, you know, what kind of company are you getting into, and culture also talks about what kind of markets, because we spoke about overall market, but I'll give you a small example that we've been very, very conscious as a company that we want to be, our North Star is a company like ServiceNow. And let me explain you why. ServiceNow as a company has always been very, very clear that we will only play in the enterprise segment. ServiceNow today has around $8 billion of ARR with only 9,000 customers. If you compare that with over 200,000 customers of Salesforce, which is out there with higher ARR, but the average ACV is very, very different. At SAFE, the average ACV by design is like, you know, we went from 5 million to $25 million in ARR only in the last 18 months, and we just have 150 customers. So if you think about it, right, that's like an average ACV of $160,000 per customer, and that's by design, that we want a culture where we get a customer and they become a customer for life. We are not getting a customer for a transaction. We want to make sure that we truly solve their cybersecurity risk management problem and solve it in the right way. And that will need them to be with us for many, many, many years to come. So I think that culture around being customer first, what kind of customers are you going after? I think, and by the way, I don't think there's one right example. Like HubSpot is a great example. They've consciously decided we only want to do mid-market. Right? And they've always done mid-market since the inception. They're like, I don't want to go upscale. I'm very, very happy with where I am, and they've nailed that model which is out there, right? So I don't think there's one answer, but again, depends on you as a sales rep, right? What resonates with you? Does SMB selling, which is slightly more transactional, which is fast-paced, of course, shorter sales cycle, does that, you know, resonate with you more? But on the other side, you know, our average deal sizes are anywhere between 5 to 7 months, but that's $160,000 worth of deals on an average. And of course, we see multiple multi-million-dollar deals. So I think that culture of, you know, saying that what kind of company do we want to consciously make? And the last parallel example, which I'll also tell you, a lot of sales reps do ask me about the average ticket size of customers, but what they don't ask about is the talent density. And let me just take a minute to explain that. When we were creating the culture of SAFE, right, I actually presented 3 scenarios of 3 different types of companies. There's one example where you are, say, Infosys or a Accenture, doesn't matter, right? Infosys, TCS, Accenture, Wipro, all of these fall in the same bucket. They will be, say, $100 to $150 billion of market cap, but they'll have anywhere between 300,000 to 500,000 people, right? That's one type of company that you build. It's purely services, right? Of course, we're not a services company, so we'll be a product company. Okay, let's take another example. Since we spoke, let's take Cisco as an example. Cisco is a $250 billion company, but it has 75,000 people. So we can maybe become that company. But I gave a third example to our company while we were creating our culture deck, saying a third example would be Netflix, where they're $250 billion, but they only have 9,000 people. So you choose what you want to become, and you do it very, very consciously, because in order to build a talent density like Netflix is very, very different than building a talent density of an Accenture, which is very, very different. And a lot of times salespeople don't ask me that question. What is the actual talent density in your company? And a great way to judge that. And that's why, like, the average payouts for a Netflix, they don't have sales rep, but engineer or designer would be way higher. Yeah. Because they only hire the best of the best of the best of the best. So we at SAFE consciously took the call that we would like to be a Netflix. So I'll give you a small example. We've raised $100 million over the last, almost 3 years, 3 years actually. Today we are at around 180 people. Last year at the same time, can you guess how many people we had? 180. The year before that, at the same time, how many people did we have? 180. And the year before that, we had around 160 maybe. Now if you see, I've kept that very, 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 very flat. It's not that the churn doesn't happen, but the churn only happens for somebody who's not performing, and then we hire more people as we keep growing. So we went from $5 million to $25 million in ARR in 18 months while keeping the headcount absolutely flat despite raising $100 million which are out there. So it talks about the conscious decisions we take. This is again going back to the culture of where the company is, and you can always take that example. In fact, LinkedIn shows you the historical headcount of salespeople, or in general the company trend which is out there, and I think that's a pretty good indication. What about your thoughts? I mean, I know you're on the younger side of building your startup. How do you look at culture, and what should be an important thing for an AE to see when you talk about culture?
Well, I think it's insightful. You share those thoughts on talent density. You can get more out of the business with higher caliber people. There's more wealth to go around in those kind of circumstances.
Totally.
It also speaks to the potency of the business model, right? Because there are some business models that can generate that much efficiency, right?
Yep.
$400,000 per employee, $1 million per employee.
Yep.
And so I think it's probably a combination between both of those, of like talent density and then just potency of the business model.
One big missing area which I see across companies is also transparency. I mean, there are sales reps who don't know what the ARR of the company is, what their gross margins are. Like, our gross margins are like 86%. We do a company-wide town hall on a weekly basis. Thursday morning, every Thursday, 7 a.m. Pacific, the whole company is on a town hall. And the first update we start with is, as of that morning, what's our ARR count? How many deals did we win? How many deals did we lose? What customers renewed or did not renew? It just keeps the pulse of the business, and this is open to everybody. 99% of Slack channels in our company are open. Everybody knows I'm shooting a podcast with you right now because all our calendars are open. We trust the people where there are no policies for travel. There are no expense policy. There's no social media policy. When we hire very, very, very smart people, we just trust them with doing the right thing which is out there. So again, goes back to the culture. And again, if you like that culture, you thrive in that culture. And that's where I think, again, a lot of salespeople don't think that through before joining in. But once you're there inside every day, that makes such a big difference, which is out there. And obviously that reflects in the company, growth, which is there. And, I mean, today, again, if you're joining a company which is growing at triple digits, right, that's very different than a company which is saying, oh, I'm growing at 20%, but I'm profitable. There'll be a very big difference in terms of the way things are moving within the company. And we come from the former category, which is out there. So again, I mean, I'm biased to think like this, but that makes it very exciting. You go big or go home. That really becomes the thing. So yeah, that's the three things which we spoke about. One was the market, which was really what is the right places for the future. The second was what are the top products in the market and how do you zero down, what are the right questions around that. The third piece was really around the company's culture, the vision, and the leadership, and the metrics around that, right? And I think the fourth big piece, which is really now coming down to the org, to the sales org, which is out there. What's happening within the org, right? Starting from just the high level, like a lot of people before joining don't ask for the comp plan, which I think like
if you're going to make $1 million W-2, you got to understand that.
Exactly, right? And here's the point. Not just to make that $1 million in terms of the payout, but what is the input that goes in? I've seen the best rep. I remember interviewing this rep. He actually showed me an Excel sheet. He said, Saket, I've taken your comp plan. I've seen that in order to hit $250,000 of commissions quarterly, I need to be at 280% of the quota. Because you typically deployed 300K of quota every quarter, and I need to be at this number. In order to be 280% of your quota, which translates to almost $800,000 of deals that need to be done, your conversion funnel is around 25%. So I need to make sure that I have $3.2 million of total pipeline, which is out there. Your average deal size is $160,000. So if I divide, 3.2 million divided by 160,000, that's 20 deals, S1s that I need to get. In order to get 20 S1s, this is the kind of avenues that I'm looking for. I understand that you have these partnerships for go-to-market, blah, blah, blah. And he actually gave me the whole process. Just the thought process was so beautifully laid out. And that needed the person to know what the comp plan is, what the sales culture is. He asked me the next question that, what makes me feel that I'll be able to hit my number? I said, what makes you feel so? He said, the company I'm coming from, I am the number one rep out of the 30 reps which are out here. And I know that your average quota attainment is 144% because I've always made sure that, we are north of 100%, and right now we're trending more towards 140, 150%. So he says, if your average attainment is 144%, I'm pretty confident I'll be in the top 10 percentile, which I know right now is again close to 300%. So I feel pretty good about the fact that I will worst case make $180,000 to $200,000 in commission, best case make between $250,000 to $300,000 of commission by quarter 3, because that's the time that I'll take to ramp up, given it's a 6-month sales cycle that you have. And I was blown away, just the sheer research that person has done, and he's walking in with confidence. Do you see sales reps do that? What are your quick thoughts on that?
Well, that's clarity right there. And yeah, we talk about that all the time at PClub, like reverse engineering your desired income, right? What's the income you want? Okay, and reverse engineer everything you just said, right? What percentage of quota do you need to attain based on your comp plan, accelerators? Are there any kickers in there?
Yep.
Look at deal size, look at close rates, and then how much pipeline are you expecting from either marketing or SDR, and how much pipeline do you need to find yourself? And that tells you like a very simple set of daily, weekly, monthly inputs. And then success becomes pretty simple at that point. It's execute the plan, and then make sure your skill is high enough so that the inputs are quality.
100%, and when you really think about the W-2s, right, I would even add to the point where, again, a great question for salespeople to ask would be, how much has the stock gone up in the last few years, right? We've been fortunate, right? Our stock price has gone up almost 30x in the last 4 years of being out there. The same thing out here, right? Because if you're committing to a company, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you meet way more salespeople than I do, Chris, but I would say a 3 to 4 year commitment would be a very reasonable expectation, because the first year you're ramping, and then it's really year 2, year 3, year 4 where you're like going in all steam. So in order to, like, if I divide those 3 to 4 year journey which is out there, if you make, say, between $750 to $1 million every year, you end up, say, between $3 to $4 million in sales commissions in 4 years. And if you then compound that or add that with, say, you got equity, and a lot of salespeople, I know that, salespeople are coin operated, I get that, and they work quarter on quarter. But again, if you just have a slightly longer vision, which is out there, and I'm not saying 10-year vision, but 3 to 4 years, and if I'm there, I not only want my W-2 to be made of only the commissions, but also the ESOP bump that I can get. Expecting, suppose you get, say, $100,000 to $200,000 worth of shares, and expecting that for a fast-growing startup like us, we went up 30x in the last 4 years, right? The next 4 years, potentially we can go up another 20 to 30x very, very reasonably with where we are and how we are. So for somebody who comes in at, say we give them $200,000 worth of stocks, expecting that number to go to, say, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million is a very reasonable expectation with, again, the world of cybersecurity with so many M&As and the IPO market opening up. So in 4 years, the ideal goal can be that, look, how do I make $3 to $4 million in sales commissions plus $3 to $4 million in stock options, which then combine looks like, say, between $6 to $8 million in 4 years of investing into a young, hot startup in one of those great industries and making that happen. That would be a great outcome, and that could be life-changing or family-changing for a lot of people. Yeah. Do you see people think like that? And just how important are ESOPs that you see with salespeople?
You've used the words compounding and compounding effect a few times during this conversation, and I think that's probably like the most relevant place to highlight the importance of a compounding process. Right? There's like this cheesy story of, would you rather have $5 million cash today, or would you rather have a penny that doubles in value once a day for 30 days? And the intuitive answer is, give me the $5 million cash. Counterintuitively, though, it turns out if you double a penny every day for 30 days, or it might be 31 days, it's like $10.7 million.
Wow. And
the interesting part of a compounding process is the big results always happen in the last part of the process. Right? So, like, I don't know what the numbers are, but if you double a penny tomorrow, it's 2 cents, then 4 cents, then 8 cents, then 16 cents, then 32, 64, et cetera. And you're like, well, this is like turning into nothing. It's only like the last few days that you start to, get into the really big money. And often that can be true with how stock options work, especially because you're vesting the stock options. They're not just given to you. It's not stock, it's stock options. And you have to vest it and you have to buy it. But if you hang on to that stuff and the company is going up in value, well, if you go up in value 30x between funding rounds and you're around 2 or 3 funding rounds,
3 funding rounds.
Yeah, and you do that, it goes up 20 to 30x each time. That's an insane amount of money, but that insane amount of money happens at the end of the process, not at the beginning of the process.
100%. So yeah, a lot of people miss that out, and I would say highly recommend people to really think through that. If you look at my track record as a CEO of Safe, I'm still at my first job. I don't know if I keep saying this, I'm not sure I'm employable outside, so I tell my team, please do well so that I have this job, and we make things happen. But of course, I've surrounded myself with very, very smart people, and again, knock on the wood, that we've done reasonably well. But if you look at the track record of every single person in the team, one, they're way more smarter than I am. And for example, our CRO, he actually scaled a company from $10 million ARR to $150 million of ARR, and then was the CEO of not one but multiple cybersecurity companies. He's a phenomenal partner with me. You spoke about Nick. I'm talking about Nick here. And similarly across the leadership, if you look at the track record of every single person, again, again goes back to our culture of high talent density. The bar of getting people in is very, very high. But again, what that means is that these people have been there, done that, and that becomes very important. Which also comes back to the culture of sales team, right? I've seen a lot of companies. I remember this big cybersecurity, hot cybersecurity company that I recruited a rep from, and he came to me and worked with me for like 6 months, and he said, "Hey, I have to tell you something." I said, "Yeah, sure." He says, "One of the most refreshing things I love about Safe is that you don't have anything called house accounts or CEO accounts." Like, I didn't even know the concept of what's a house account or CEO account. And he said, in my previous company, there used to be like some accounts which only the CEO would run, and these were like very big accounts, so we got very big deals there, of course. And no sales rep was ever allowed to touch that account, or they would never get commissions on that. And it was just, where it is. Now, do I run accounts? Of course I do, right? I mean, which B2B sales CEO or B2B CEO will not run accounts? You are the number one salesperson that the company has. But that's the very opportunity to train reps, to show them, look, how do you do the right discovery? How do you get to the pain? How do you go ahead and actually try to close deals? And, hopefully you're closing some of the largest deals which are out there, where you get the learning and you give the learning to the reps. So that talks about the culture. I can't imagine being in a company where, you do some stuff and the CEO comes in between and says, "Okay, my account now, you're done." And it's a very bad place to be, and I don't know why people would want to stay in such places. Any stories like this have you heard in terms of the culture of sales teams?
I'm embarrassed to admit, but I've also never heard of the term house accounts until today. This is news for me. We didn't have anything like that. We certainly don't have that at PClub. We didn't have anything like that at Gong, and it's kind of shocking that's
why Gong did well, and I'm sure PClub will also do well similarly. But that's about the sales team culture, which actually brings me to the final part of the sales team culture, which really boils down to enablement. Because getting great people in, I would say, is actually not even half. I would say 30 to 40% of the job, right? Because everybody's after great people, right? And there are too many examples where an all-star NBA team doesn't always win versus a team which is enabled and is superpowered is to do what they're supposed to do and works like a team and plays like a team, right? And that's where it goes back to really preparing people in the right way for each and every position that they're responsible for, right? So Chris, I mean, I'm huge about enablement, right? And it starts from me. I'm very, very clear on that, right? That we would never ask a rep to do something that I've not done or my sales leaders have not done. So I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but just your quick thoughts, because you do so much enablement for everybody. And by the way, we are exceptionally happy customers of PClub, and I'm for whatever it's worth, I was your first customer, Chris. There, I mean, I stumbled across your video. You only used to have one video at that time, and I remember while I was taking your discovery masterclass, you actually probably came up with number 2 or number 3 also, just during that time. And while I was watching them, I was like, oh, holy shit! Like, you make so much sense, and I have probably like a 2,000 row Excel sheet with only notes I've taken, every single slide, every single things that you taught, which is pretty incredible. And today you have like 50 courses on your platform. What's the culture of great enablement look like? Where have you seen the best enablement, and what can reps which are trying to switch a company before they join a company ask to the salespeople that they're assured that they get the right enablement platforms?
Yeah, I mean, first you can just simply ask the question, right? It's not complicated. You just have to do it. But the best sales teams I've found are very focused on skill transformation, on learning and education, coaching, right? The frontline managers tend to be very good coaches. The worst, like, I always get really bummed out when I hear and come across of sales organizations where the sales leaders are kind of like, just go like do your learning on like nights or weekends, or the reps are like, I don't really need that. I'm already pretty good. They're almost never the good ones who say that, just as a side note. Like, anytime I come across them, they're never like the top performing reps. The best rep I have at my company, he's taken a ton of our courses. You would expect that at our company.
I thought that would be a job requirement.
But he's taken a ton outside of the ones we're like doing as a team, right? Sure. Every quarter or so we'll focus on one. And he's only been here for a few months. He's taken like 10 or 12 courses already, and he uses them really well. And he's a rising star at the company.
By the way, I'm on course number 11 in your platform, just for the record. So I've
Should
got
we make it a competition?
that I know.
We need like an all-time leaderboard in the app so people can see, and then they can compete with you.
Yeah.
But I just have a passion for education and skills, because I think skills truly are the unlock for so many people to achieve new levels of like economic prosperity for themselves and their families. There was a guy named Chet Holmes who unfortunately is no longer with us. He was like kind of I guess he was in some ways like a sales trainer or consultant back in like the 90s. And I used to love the guy. I would like listen to all his YouTube videos and stuff. But I remember hearing a training he was giving, and he was making the point that like skills are this unlock. And he goes, if you take a construction company, like an entrepreneur who starts a construction company and they build it to $100 million, and then you take another entrepreneur who starts a construction company and they only build it to $1 million and they flatline. What's the difference between these two entrepreneurs? And people would say things, and he would say, it's skills. It's skill. The difference between a $100 million entrepreneur and a $1 million entrepreneur is skills. And now my favorite part is like one guy in the audience like kind of heckled him. He's like, nah, the guy who built it to $100 million probably raised a bunch of money. That was the difference. And he goes, yeah. Raising capital is a skill. Next question. So, skills to me are like what create value indirectly, because to me, the purpose of business is creating value in the marketplace, right? Yeah. You solve problems, you deliver outcomes.
Totally.
And what comes before that? Well, it's delivering a product. What comes before that? It's selling the product. And almost everything can be traced down to skills, right, in your organization. From the CEO all the way down, value is created in the marketplace through excellence, which is then translated into external value.
Okay, the final piece, which actually brings me to the last piece around, I think most salespeople miss out on, is really pipeline generation, right? Because we spoke about the market, we spoke about product, we spoke about the company, we spoke about sales org and their culture. But if all of that's right, but the pipeline generation number is not right, because a lot of time people get excited about the year-over-year growth of the company. What excites me more, again, that's the effect. The cause is the right pipeline. And I've had many reps tell me, Saket, please tattoo PG on your forehead, because the first question when I ask my VP of sales, when I ask any rep, is not where are we in our numbers and quota attainment, it's really where are we on a weekly basis on the pipeline that we generate, right? And that's really the lifeblood of anything and everything we do, right? So just your quick thoughts, right, Chris, right? What would be the right ways for a rep to see if they're joining a company? Does that have the right framework of doing PG, or how serious are the leaders about PG? I have some thoughts, but would love to get your thoughts on it.
Well, I think you just need to ask the questions of like, is there predictable pipeline? And that's not to say like you need things to be easy. You're not looking for handouts when it comes to pipeline, but you don't want to walk into a situation where nobody really knows how to find pipeline, right? You want to find that there's some predictable, repeatable success when it comes to pipeline generation. So asking those questions, right? Where are people finding pipeline? What are their methods? Who are they targeting? Where are they getting leads from? That kind of stuff. Unless you're going to be like the first account executive at a startup, then as long as you know what you're signing up for, and you're like, your job is to figure all of that out.
Yeah.
Not go into a system that's already working. But I think it's an insightful one. What you said a minute ago really resonated, which is, year-over-year growth and ARR, that's the effect. The cause is a consistent drumbeat of pipeline generation going into the company.
Yeah, 100% aligned to that. And I think, for example, the first metric where I always want to crush our numbers on is really pipeline generation, right? That's non-negotiable. And I know a lot of times, salespeople I mean, VPs get into the weeds of how many meetings, how many calls, etc., etc. Again, I'm not opposed to that, but we don't do that in SAFE, right? What we do is we have a very clear understanding that in order to meet 250% of your quota, which will lead you to a $1 million W2 throughout the year, you will need to generate $125,000 worth of opportunity every week, right? And then we just gamify the whole process, right? Because now that we know that this is the amount of pipeline that you need on a week-on-week basis, every week on, we do PG Tuesdays, for example, right? So the whole day, even if I'm calling for meetings or anybody's calling for meetings, nobody goes there. There's the whole day is blocked only and only for pipeline, right? I like what you say in one of your posts around you want to do that for 2 hours every day, because pipeline generation is a lifestyle. It's not about, I'll do it once and then it's done. It's like going to the gym, right? You build the muscle memory around that. And I think a lot of salespeople, what you rightly pointed out, I love the word predictable, because there needs to be not one but multiple sources, right? And I think it was you or somebody I was reading, right? You have to almost think of it like the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, where you're thinking about what are the different avenues where I can get pipeline from. I'll give you some examples in SAFE, right? One of our biggest ways in which we get pipeline is channel partners, and our leader for channel partner, again, you talk about track record, right? He was in a company called Rubrik, where he joined them at 20 million ARR, left them at around $700 million of ARR as one of their leaders for channel, which was out there. Now, he's somebody who's seen the movie, and when he came over to us almost now, 3 quarters back, we became a 100% channels company. And now what we're doing is that we actually have reps who go out of the office of the channel and sit in the office on the PG Tuesdays, and we always start by giving. So because we're a 100% channels company, if a deal comes to us, we go and hand it over to the channel. Everybody's going to a channel AE and asking for accounts, right? Instead of asking accounts, go and give them deals. Now you've got their ear. Now they want to understand what you do, how you do things. And that is how, we've been very, very successful. Last quarter, 25% of our pipeline came from channels. Right? Now that's very, very predictable. So we're doubling down on that, et cetera, et cetera. Similarly, a non-conventional way of looking at pipeline is for us cyber insurance companies, because we provide the security posture of companies. We have partnership with the biggest cyber insurance companies on the planet. We are actually integrated to a ton of their billing systems, where when they are going out to give quotes for cyber insurance policies, they're saying, please install SAFE. And whatever SAFE says as your security risk posture will be the basis on which we will quote your premiums. And again, very, very significant amount of pipeline last quarter, in the range of around 15%, came from that. And that's every quarter increasing between 3 to 5 points, which is out there. So the reason I'm giving you these examples are these are very, very clear sections of places where we get leads from. Another good example will be, we've been the biggest sponsors of the Gartner Risk Summit, which is the world's largest risk summit when it comes to cybersecurity, and being the absolute top sponsors. With the likes of CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks, etc., it just not only positions us in the right way, but every single year it has been the #1 lead generator for us in order to go ahead and really put things together. And it's been worth every penny, because on an average every year, we've been doing anywhere between 6 to 8 times of business for the amount of money that we spend on the largest booth in the world's largest cybersecurity risk conference, because again, in our view, we are creating the world's #1 cyber risk management platform. So again, going back to pipeline generation, these are very, very predictable areas in putting things together. In fact, talking about that, we have a community of 16,000 members that we founded, and we are the main sponsors of, which is called the FAIR Institute. It has 700 CISOs. I sit on the board of directors out there, and just that sheer community of knowledge. So think of it like the way there is Apache Spark is to Databricks, Apache Kafka is to Confluent, FAIR Institute is to Safe Security, which basically means the open standard of doing risk quantification is called FAIR. The commercial version of that is what Safe does, right? And that's again a great area where people, when they're learning FAIR and they stumble upon our product, they're like, oh wow, I can automate all of that. I don't mind paying for it because I don't have to get an analyst, and using AI you can do a ton of stuff. Again, that becomes a very predictable way in which we can generate great pipelines. So again, these are different areas, but a lot of reps don't come and ask me that question or my team that question of saying, how do you do PG in a creative way, in putting things together? What are the sources where I'll get the right pipeline from and put things together? But again, like, I think that's like the lifeblood of what most people miss out. Making the $1 million payouts, getting into a great company, all of that I still feel is a byproduct. The core is really pipeline generation, putting things there. Would you agree to that? And any final thoughts on that?
I don't disagree. I think that's really insightful. I like the mental model of like cause versus effect, and like the most, the source of all of it starts with pipeline generation.
Fantastic. So just summing things up, I think the 5 points we spoke about start with the market and the subsection in the market, because if you look at the whole value chain, you want to be on top of the value chain which is out there. The second point was really, what are the top products, selling of the highest value which is there in the market. If I'm a CRM, I want to be in Salesforce. If I'm a HR management, I want to be in Workday or an emerging Workday or whatever that is. If I'm in cybersecurity, you want to be in cyber risk management, which is on the top of the pyramid. So that's the subsection. The second part, which is the right products. The third part is really, how do you look at the company vision, culture, the leadership, the track record. The fourth part is really, how do you look at the sales org and the culture, enablement, how are reps performing out there, their track record. And the final piece is, how do they do pipeline generation? Are they very serious, sincere about pipeline generation, putting things together? And again, Chris, we've been growing exceptionally fast. I mean, we have 25 reps, and by the end of the year, we plan to be in north of 100 reps. So it's a very exciting time for us. So just articulating this whole framework of putting, people together in the right way. And as Vinod Khosla says, a company is the people you hire, not the plans you make. That's why it just helps me think that through. And again, leaders like yourself, which have seen so many sales orgs and sales A's, you chipping in and giving us guidance, giving us your platform really means a lot.
Yeah.
So Chris, any final thoughts around that? And we'll wrap up then.
No, I had an absolute blast, and thanks for having me.
Thank you for doing this with me. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to doing the next one with you.
All right.
Cheers.
Thanks, Saket.
Thank you, Chris.